It's 2024. Brand new year. Brand new you. Unless, of course, you're watching this in 2025 or any year thereafter, in which case this video is evergreen and wicked smart. You should watch it in its entirety and hit subscribe and like before turning away. And if you didn't hear by now, well, I hate to be the one to break this to you, but crime is out of control. In fact, it's more sophisticated and deadly than ever before. These aren't your grandmother's super predators that need to be brought to heel. They're roving gangs of super stealers that band together to commit crime on an unprecedented scale. Using sophisticated techniques like overwhelming numbers and Tanuki suit power-ups, they've managed to single-handedly destroy civilization, increase inflation, making everything more expensive, and worst of all, they're unable to help themselves. The biggest target of this filth? Target.
9 of its stores, including the one on 117th Street in Harlem. The stores will shutter for good on October 21st.
And as Fox 5's Arthur Chan reports, Target's blaming the closures on ongoing problems with theft and violence.
Among other major retailers that are forced to close down due to unprecedented shoplifting levels. Bad boys, what you gonna do? And bad girls and non-binary people as well, when they come for you. Be afraid, be stressed, be angry, be scared, be stressed, be more stressed, be even angrier. Buy a gun, protect yourself, buy a gun, shoot your neighbor, become the monsters you're afraid of. You ever just stop and think about how many cop shows there are? I'm not just talking about the classics or the movies, but like, how many goddamn random-ass shows there are about state enforcement and its heroics. Sure, there's exceptions to the rule, but for the most part, the majority paint criminals as violent rapists or agents of chaos looking to watch the world burn, and the police are the noble hunting heroes who always get the bad guy.
This job really isn't how, shows like CSI make it out to be. I mean, when I first joined the force, I assumed there was semen on everything.
Or what about true crime and how it dominates so much of podcasting and digital download sections of the internet? Even reality TV is filled with shows about cops being cops and catching the bad guys. This overwhelming surplus of media that frames society breaking down into good and evil, with the police being the only thing standing in the way of complete and utter jokification, has an insidious and intended effect upon you and society as a whole. Now, don't worry. This video isn't about how you should go into your local Blockbuster and steal as many Ricky Martin Blu-rays as you can to start a revolution or something. It's actually about the importance of perspective. How exposure and reinforcement of stereotypes about both crime and poverty and its intersection with racialization and history don't reflect data or reality sometimes. We've all both bought into and helped spread the collective mythos about how society works, that poor people are lazy and they're evil, and that they chose a life of violence or theft because of a moral defect or the thrill of the heist, or if you happen to be a race realist, maybe not the proper cranium size. That social programs such as welfare or food insecurity, relief, or housing create laziness and poverty itself. That addicts chose their lifestyle and are now powerless to stop it. Candy should be purchased, not stolen, from a vending machine, which can also kill. Yes, that's right. An estimated 2 people in America die every single year from vending machine crushing, crushed and killed in horrific ways. Despite the yearly vending machine crush-a-thon, we still see fit to have automated sugar distributors because their overall benefit to society outweighs their murder sprees. While a few people do get crushed by them in random freak accidents, it's not enough of a prevalent phenomenon to justify a war on vending machines. But if ever you were a kid, every cartoon and comic book and movie you saw positioned your worldview that there's an inherent evil army of vending machines just waiting to stick out an O. Henry bar long enough to pull in another suspecting victim. You might start looking at them differently on the street, and it might be worth examining why some of us see the world in such a light, and if it warrants believing in false solutions to a problem we don't fully understand. Just put a pin in the vending machine thing. I'm not trying to derail this completely. Let's go back to shoplifting.
A prime example of the madness is San Francisco, where organized retail theft has gotten so bad that half the stores in its downtown area have shuttered.
I have no sympathy and no empathy. Subsistence theft? Fake eyelashes, deodorant, Dayquil? Spare me.
For those at home, so organized retail crime's a little bit different than just shoplifting. It's typically 2 or more people who steal with the intent of selling it at a profit, whereas, shoplifting could just be a single individual going in. So just to clarify that.
Police saying they stole over $12,000 in merchandise from a Macy's at a mall on Long Island.
But first, I want to get to the cover story that the left has fully bought into, that these thieves are desperate, that they're living in poverty and have no choice but to steal because they need to feed their families. Now, first off, the assumption that crimes must be committed by the poor is, pretty damn defamatory toward disadvantaged individuals.
I'm not trying to downplay its severity. After all, the National Retail Association stated that nearly half of the $94.5 billion in missing merchandise in 2021 was stolen.
You heard me right. Con men, thieves, degenerates, low.
If it was true, but it's not. In fact, it's an obscene lie that they had to walk back completely from. The estimated amount of missing merchandise due to theft turned out to be less than 5%. Writing for the New York Times, Eduardo Medina states, the trade publication Retail Dive revealed that faulty data had been used to arrive at the inaccurate figure. The retraction comes as retail chains like Target continue to claim that they are the victims of large shoplifting operations that have cut into profits, forcing them to close stores or inconvenience customers by locking products away. The claims have been fueled by widely shared videos of a few instances of brazen shoplifters, including images of mass groups smashing windows and grabbing high-end purses and cell phones. But the data shows this impression of rampant criminality was a mirage. Oh, and speaking of Target, you know how they had to close down their stores because of out-of-control super predator 1984 woke gangs that were smashing into the stores to steal their way into the revolution?
Shoplifting on a large scale has become a national crisis, costing retailers over $112 billion in losses last year, according to a National Retail Federation survey. Target's East Harlem store is one of 9 locations. It's closing nationwide, all for the same reason.
Well, crime data investigations revealed that they were actually lying about the shoplifting numbers driving those decisions. According to a report and investigation by Popular Information, the Target stores that were closing down were doing so despite having lower shoplifting incident reports than other stores that were nearby but staying open. In the case of the Folsom Street San Francisco location closing, it had a shocking mere 23 reported incidents of shoplifting compared to its Mission Street location, which remains open despite having 385 incidents. The same trend was observed in New York and Seattle, which directly points to the fact that the stores were not in fact closing because of theft or roving sophisticated gangs, but a number of other factors related to shrink. It's a complicated, multifaceted issue. Purchasing power amongst consumers can fall as inflation rises and wages stagnate. Consumer habits of shopping in person for goods rather than online is ever evolving. Supply chain lines globally are being interrupted, and the pandemic completely changed elements of the market and how it operates. Yet corporate profit margins, which measure how much money a firm makes from sales after expenses, began soaring in 2020 and in 2022 hit the highest level since the 1950s. They've since slowed down a bit but are still monstrously huge, pointing towards a missing part of the story: corporate greed. Paul Donovan, chief economist for UBS Global Wealth Management, wrote in Financial Times, "The power of storytelling has conditioned consumers to accept price rises, and consumers seem to be buying stories that seem to justify price increase, but which really serve as cover for profit margin expansion. While companies have tried many different red herrings to distract people from greedflation, none are quite so insidious as the idea that greedy workers wanted more money or unionizing is forcing them to raise prices, because reality is the opposite. Workers are desperately pushing to keep their pay comparable with the rising cost of goods and inflation." And that's where this all comes full circle. Because remember how we discussed that there's a non-stop stream of crime waves being put forward in media outlets from mainstream to independent, and how film and television dramas reflect a worldview that police make the world safer from petty criminals who are often people of color. Well, the biggest form of theft in America is wage theft. Like, to disgustingly disproportionate degrees. It's such a blatantly massive gap from other forms of theft that it even blew the Vlogbrothers' wholesome little brains.
At property crime, let's also add in the largest category of property crime, wage theft. That's when an employer steals a worker's labor by not paying them their legally required wages and benefits. Per year, somewhere between $20 and $60 billion of labor is stolen from workers in the US. More than Madoff stole, every year. More than all other property crime. More than every stolen car, burglary, shoplifting, all that stuff combined. And yet, while there are hundreds of thousands of law enforcement officers who work on all those property crime bits, there are around 1,000 who work on wage theft. And the companies doing it find it more efficient to pay the fines than to actually pay their workers, as Walmart has done 96 times in the last 20 years. I myself know about wage theft because I actually got a wage theft settlement after working for Walmart for a summer. So John, the biggest theft of all time? It's one that is ongoing, that everybody knows about, that has profoundly more impact on the already disadvantaged, one that most people have been a victim of, and one that almost no one has ever gone to jail for. That is quite a heist.
Everything from bosses paying employees less than their agreed upon rate, not paying overtime, substituting tips for salary, or even just flat out not paying people at all. It accounts for the majority of theft in America, yet barely gets any coverage on TV or policing by a body that is equipped to handle it. Again, if we spent half the resources of a city budget on something that doesn't hurt us often,
like the scourge of vending machines killing people,
and spent a ton of money on a task force to prevent machines from crushing us, it would be seen as just a massive waste of money. A new study from the University of Toronto and York University found that there's no proof to suggest that increased police funding actually lowers crime rates. And this is reflected in other major studies that have done the same over 2 decades and found that there were, quote, no consistent association found between police funding and crime rates across municipalities going down. To justify spending nearly half a budget on a program that doesn't solve the problem it's supposed to requires constant fear-mongering and reinforcement. That's how most people think violent crime is out of control. Violent crime is actually down overall. It also doesn't help that Black and Indigenous people are dramatically overrepresented in the criminal justice system for a complex set of reasons and systems that we can't go into detail right now, but we will in a later video. And then seeing them repeatedly appear in both crime statistics and as criminals on television reinforce the concept that they could be inherently more dangerous simply for existing. White and Black people use drugs at comparable rates, yet Black people are way more likely to have police encounters, like being pulled over or stopped on the street, and then they're more likely to be searched or arrested, and then more likely not to have money for bail or be able to afford a good lawyer, and they may receive harsher sentences. The war on drugs is in a very real sense a war on minorities and the poor. But I hear you say if there were no police, then this would run rampant, and no one wants that. In the UK, only 1 in 100 cases reported to the police result in a charge. In 2020, there were 52,210 cases of recorded by the police, and only 843 resulted in a charge or summons. That's a rate of 1.6%. Meaning that someone advocating for abolition or defunding the police isn't doing so because they're pro. It's because the current system operating as it does is letting rapists get away with it. The current system is pro, or at least ineffective at stopping it. We need to recognize what's taking place. We're paying vast amounts of money on programs that aren't solving our problems while we reinforce the idea that it's a necessary good for society through our media and discourse. There are programs like STAR in Denver that divert some 911 calls to social workers instead of police, and they yield such successful results, such as more people receiving mental health care or help and less people being arrested or shot, that the program is expanding despite fierce opposition. If the overwhelming majority of theft is wage theft, and we barely police it, then we don't care about theft. We don't care about solving theft. We care more about upholding the status quo. Police effectively serve as police for the poor. And study after study after study has shown that if you give money to people who are homeless, who live on the street, who have nothing, they don't spend that money universally on just drugs or alcohol. They spend it on the same things everyone does, on housing, on food, and in many cases, it gets them back up on their feet. AKA, we need a universal basic income program to solve these problems. And if you're worried about having to pay more money in taxes to fund it, guess what? The way to pay for it all is taxing the rich. Sure, it'll never be as sexy as Florida man runs into Walmart without pants and begins pooping uncontrollably. I mean, we want to hear and watch the saga of the mad pooper. But if we look towards countries that have better systems than we do in the USA or Canada, like say in Denmark or Finland, where they prioritize housing first and social programs that reduce the amount of crime by attacking the root causes of it, then we should recognize that we're wasting a ton of money on a system that just enriches police budgets every year, while protecting the wealth of one class of people from theft, while also not getting anything really for our money. If terms like abolition or defunding or even reform are too radical or extreme for you, why not point out that police shouldn't have to be social workers or divorce court attorneys or psychologists or grief counselors? They shouldn't have to answer calls where people are having mental health breakdowns or maybe mistake someone having an episode or PTSD as an imminent threat or danger.
I don't understand how someone dies during a wellness check. When I first saw the report, I thought it was some morbid joke. And you look at it and you say, yes, there'll be an independent investigation. But frankly, along with many Canadians, Indigenous peoples living in Canada, politicians, I'm pissed, I'm outraged. There needs to be a full accounting of what has gone on.
They shouldn't have to spend all day policing the poor, breaking up their tents, moving them from one street or alley to another, if the unhoused were simply housed. They shouldn't have to respond to someone overdosing if they had a safe supply or had medical intervention. They wouldn't have to stop people stealing baby formula and diapers if they could afford baby formula and diapers. And romanticizing the police as superheroes who put themselves in harm's way, while people who deliver food have higher rates of violent confrontations yet can have their wages stolen by their own boss, makes absolutely no sense. It doesn't have to be ACAB or F12. It could just be, what the fuck are we doing with all of our money?
Sink into the abyss of a new dark age, made more sinister and perhaps more protracted by the lights of perverted sorrow.
Howdy, everybody. I just wanted to let you know that for the cost of a cup of coffee, you can unlock bonus uncensored episodes of Mind Explosions by going to patreon.com/theserfs. Our videos couldn't exist without your support, and all our content is released early to our Patreon subscribers, as well as a ton of extra content you can't get anywhere else. Please like, subscribe, and thumbs up this channel, and if you're feeling extra perky, share it anywhere you think people would like to see or learn from our videos.
Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Can you please hit the like and subscribe button and maybe leave a comment? It really does help the videos out. But first, the people who produce everything you see before you and make this entire channel possible: Amazing Fletch, Anna Loves Riley, Ariane McCarthy, Cheryl Alvarez, Doug Caddy, Everything Important, Hagbard Celine, Multimondi, Omni, Peanut Butter Blondie, Political Puppy, Quiet 185, Rachel K, Riley and Anna, Roller Dragon, Ruby K, Cernicus, The Spinach Monster, Stellar Vision, Sebastian Demel, Trevbot.exe, Words Greenwood, and Travis McClinton. And also thank you to every other person who helps fund this show. Their names are on the screen right now. It would not be possible without every single one of them. We cannot thank you enough. And if you want to join the Patreon, please come to patreon.com/theserfs and help us exist.